The sleek conference room fell silent as Olivia Bennett adjusted the final slide of her presentation. 20 pairs of eyes fixed on the stunning 3D rendering of her sustainable resort design, a masterpiece of glass, reclaimed wood, and living walls that seemed to breathe with the surrounding forest. And that's how we reduced the carbon footprint by 78% while increasing guest satisfaction scores by an estimated 22%, she concluded, her voice steady despite the nervous flutter in her chest. Any questions? The senior partners exchanged impressed glances. This was the moment Olivia had been working toward since joining the firm 3 years ago, the project that would finally earn her promotion she deserved. "Brilliant work, Bennett," said creative director Marcus, nodding appreciatively. "If this doesn't win the Thorne contract, nothing will." Olivia allowed herself a small smile as she gathered her materials. The mention of Thorne Developments sent an involuntary chill down her spine. 6 months ago, Alexander Thorne had publicly eviscerated her design, costing her both a major contract and her professional confidence. She'd spent every waking moment since then rebuilding her reputation, determined never to let herself be vulnerable to his particular brand of arrogance again. Her phone vibrated as she stepped into the hallway. Mia's name flashed on the screen. "Hey, superstar," Olivia answered. "Just finish the presentation and—" "Liv, I need a massive favor." Mia's voice sounded strained, almost tearful. "I fell on the stairs. Doctor says it's a clean break, but I'm stuck in this cast for 6 weeks minimum." "Oh my God, are you okay?" "I'll survive, but my career might not. That exclusive client meeting at Evergreen Lodge? It's tomorrow and I can't go. Please tell me you can take my place." Olivia hesitated. "The mountain retreat? Mia, I have 3 deadlines next week. This client could change everything for both of us. They're looking for an architectural partner, too. It's the opportunity of a lifetime." The desperation in her friend's voice made the decision for her. "Text me the details. I'll make it work." 3 hours later, Olivia was throwing sweaters and boots into a suitcase while scanning Mia's briefing document. The client was listed only as confidential luxury development group. Exclusive indeed. "Just get there, dazzle him with your brilliance, and be back by Sunday," she muttered to herself, zipping the suitcase closed. The drive to Evergreen Lodge took longer than expected. As her car climbed higher into the mountains, fat snowflakes began to fall, quickly transforming into a swirling white curtain. By the time she pulled up to the imposing timber and stone structure, visibility had dropped to mere feet, and the wind howled like a wounded animal. The lodge manager greeted her with a worried expression. "Miss Bennett? Thank goodness you arrived safely. The client is waiting in the private cabin. I'm afraid the weather forecast has deteriorated significantly. They're now predicting the worst blizzard in 15 years. How long will it last?" Olivia asked, suddenly uneasy. 3 days minimum. The road might be impassable by morning. Steeling herself, Olivia followed him through the thickening snow to an elegant cabin set apart from the main lodge. The manager knocked once before opening the door. "Your guest has arrived, Mr. Thorne." Olivia froze in the doorway as Alexander Thorne turned from the fireplace, his steel-gray eyes widening slightly in recognition. The same eyes that had regarded her with cold dismissal 6 months ago, when he crushed her career aspirations with a few cutting words. "Miss Bennett," he said, his deep voice betraying no emotion. "This is unexpected." Behind her, the wind slammed the door shut with finality, as if sealing her fate. Through the window, she could see the blizzard transforming into a white wall of fury. Trapped. She was trapped in a remote mountain cabin with the man she hated most in the world. "Hello, my beautiful souls. Welcome back to the Chapters of Love, where every story touches a heart and reminds us that even in our darkest moments, love finds a way." I wonder, where are you listening from tonight? Are you curled up in bed with a warm cup of tea? Perhaps you're on your commute home, seeking an escape from the day's stress? Or maybe you're like me, watching the rain against your window and dreaming of a love powerful enough to overcome even the deepest resentment? Wherever you are, I'm so grateful you've chosen to spend this time with me. If this story speaks to your heart, please tap that like button. It helps our community grow and lets me know which stories touch you most deeply. Now, Settle in as we discover how being trapped with your worst enemy can sometimes lead to your greatest love. I believe there's been a misunderstanding, Olivia said, gripping her portfolio case like a shield. I'm here representing Mia Chun. She broke her leg. Alexander's expression remained unreadable as he set down his whiskey glass. Ms. Chun was supposed to discuss interior design concepts. You're an architect, a versatile one. Olivia lifted her chin. Mia and I collaborate frequently. I'm fully briefed on your project requirements. Are you? One dark eyebrow arched upward. Or are you here to pitch another impractical fantasy like the one at the Westlake presentation? The memory sliced through her with perfect clarity. Standing before the Thorne Developments Board 6 months ago, heart pounding with excitement as she unveiled her most innovative design yet. She'd spent weeks perfecting every detail of the sustainable luxury resort, a revolutionary concept that would redefine eco-conscious hospitality. Then Alexander Thorne had leaned forward, those cold gray eyes dissecting her work with surgical precision. Impressive aesthetics, Ms. Bennett, but utterly divorced from financial reality. This firm doesn't invest in architectural vanity projects. The boardroom had fallen silent. Her career trajectory, which had been soaring just moments before, plummeted as a contract went to her competitor, who later implemented several of her ideas without credit. That fantasy won the Architectural Sustainability Award last month, she replied, the words sharp as icicles. Though I suppose innovation matters less than profit margins in your world. A muscle tightened in his jaw. You know nothing about my world. I know enough. Olivia turned toward the door. This was a mistake. I'll contact Mia about rescheduling. Alexander didn't move to stop her as she yanked open the door, only to be met by a wall of white. The wind nearly knocked her backward, snowflakes stinging her face like tiny needles. You won't make it 10 feet in that, he said from behind her. The forecast shows this storm intensifying over the next 48 hours. Olivia slowly closed the door, her stomach sinking. There must be rooms available in the main lodge. The manager already informed me they've evacuated all non-essential staff. The remaining guests are consolidated in the east wing for safety. Alexander gestured to the spacious cabin around them. This location was selected for privacy. It has its own generator and provisions. So I'm just supposed to stay here? With you? The words came out sharper than intended. Unless you prefer freezing to death. He moved to the kitchen area and opened a cabinet. The alternative lacks appeal, even for someone who clearly finds my company intolerable. Olivia set her bag down with deliberate calm, though her mind raced with increasingly desperate alternatives. I'll sleep on the couch. There's a second bedroom. Alexander nodded toward a hallway. I don't bite, Ms. Bennett, despite whatever villainous qualities you've attributed to me. It's not about... She stopped herself, taking a deep breath. Fine. 2 days. We can maintain professional courtesy for that long. Indeed. His tone was maddeningly neutral as he filled a kettle with water. Tea? No. Thank. The lights flickered once, twice, then plunged the cabin into darkness. Perfect, she muttered. In the sudden blackness, she heard Alexander moving with surprising confidence. A drawer opened and closed. Then a beam of light cut through the darkness as he switched on a powerful flashlight. The generator should kick in automatically, he said, handing her a second flashlight. If not, we'll need to start manually. There's a fireplace in each room and plenty of firewood on the covered porch. The calm efficiency in his voice caught her off guard. This wasn't the boardroom tyrant she'd expected. The man who delegated every task to underlings. You seem prepared for this, she observed reluctantly. I grew up in Montana. Power outages were a winter ritual. He moved to a closet, extracting extra blankets and emergency lanterns with practiced ease. Check the kitchen for candles while I get the fireplaces going. As Olivia rummaged through drawers, finding matches and candles exactly where he'd suggested, she watched him from the corner of her eye. Alexander Thorne, the notorious Iceman of the development world, was on his knees before the hearth, expertly arranging kindling and logs. Within minutes, flames licked upward, casting a warm glow across the room. The generator hummed to life just as he finished lighting the second fireplace, But he continued his preparations. We should keep these going regardless. If the generator fails again, the temperature will drop quickly. Olivia stood in the doorway, candles clutched in her hands, suddenly uncertain. The man efficiently preparing for their survival seemed nothing like the callous executive who dismissed her work. For the first time, she felt the uncomfortable sensation of her preconceptions shifting. "The storm's getting worse," he said, glancing out the window at the howling whiteness. "We should inventory our supplies. It might be longer than 2 days." The reality of their situation settled over her like a weight. They were truly trapped here, 2 adversaries forced into an intimacy neither had chosen, with nowhere to retreat and no one else to buffer the tension crackling between them. "The windows in the sunroom need reinforcement," Alexander said, consulting a hand-drawn map of the cabin he'd sketched with surprising detail. "The wind's hitting that side directly." Olivia nodded, already gathering cushions from the couch. "We can use these to absorb vibration. Do you have duct tape?" He produced a roll from a utility drawer without hesitation. Their fingers brushed as he handed it to her, the brief contact sending an unexpected jolt through her system. She pulled back quickly, attributing the reaction to static electricity. Working in tense silence, they moved through the cabin methodically. Alexander checked each window seal, while Olivia arranged emergency supplies in accessible locations. The efficiency of their improvised system surprised her. They anticipated each other's movements with an unspoken rhythm that felt almost natural. "You missed a spot," she said, reaching past him to secure a loose corner of plastic sheeting over a window. The movement brought her close enough to catch his scent, cedar and something unexpectedly warm, like amber. "I was getting to it," he replied, his voice lower than before. For a moment, they stood too close in the narrow hallway, neither moving away immediately. Olivia stepped back first. "I'll check the water supply." In the kitchen, she found herself studying the contents of the refrigerator with unnecessary intensity. The storm howled outside, rattling the reinforced windows like a living entity trying to break in, despite the generator's steady hum. The cabin felt suddenly smaller, more intimate than its generous square footage suggested. "We have enough food for at least 4 days," Alexander announced, entering the kitchen with a stack of firewood. He arranged the logs with mathematical precision beside the hearth, longer for conservative. "For days." Olivia nearly dropped the pasta box she was holding. "The manager said 3 maximum." The manager was being optimistic. He straightened, brushing with dust from his hands. "I checked the weather radar before the internet went down. This system is moving slower than predicted." The prospect of 4 days trapped with Alexander Thorne made her stomach tighten. Yet watching him move around the kitchen with quiet competence, rolling up his sleeves to wash his hands at the sink, she glimpsed something that didn't align with her mental image of him. The Alexander she thought she knew would be making demands, not calmly preparing for survival. "I can cook," she offered, surprising herself, "if you handle the fire maintenance." He glanced at her, something like amusement flickering in his eyes. "Deal. Though I should warn you, I have standards." "Of course you do," she muttered, but without the venom from earlier. As she prepared a simple pasta dish with the available ingredients, Alexander set the table with unexpected attention to detail. Cloth napkins folded precisely, wine glasses arranged just so. When she raised an eyebrow, he shrugged. "Civilization shouldn't be abandoned just because we're snowbound." The meal passed in surprisingly comfortable conversation about neutral topics, architecture trends, sustainable materials, places they'd traveled. Olivia caught herself almost enjoying his insightful observations about Japanese minimalism, before remembering who she was talking to. "Why development?" she asked suddenly. "With your eye for design, you could have been an architect yourself." Something closed in his expression. "Family legacy. Thorne Developments was my father's company. And you never wanted anything else?" "What I wanted wasn't relevant." He refilled their water glasses with deliberate movements. "Some paths are predetermined." The unexpected vulnerability in that statement hung between them, neither acknowledging it directly. Outside, the wind screamed louder, as if punctuating the moment. Later, as the evening deepened into night, the question of sleeping arrangements loomed. Alexander showed her to the second bedroom, maintaining a careful distance. "There are extra blankets in the chest," he said, standing in the doorway. "The temperature drops significantly overnight, even with the heating system." Olivia nodded, suddenly aware how alone they truly were. "Thank you." A moment of awkward silence stretched between them. "Good night, Miss Bennett," he finally said, his voice formal again. "Olivia," she corrected, not sure why it mattered. "If we're going to be trapped here for days, Miss Bennett seems excessive." Something shifted in his expression, a softening around the eyes. "Good night, Olivia." "Good night, Alexander." As he turned to leave, the lights flickered ominously once more. They both looked up, then at each other, a moment of shared concern that felt strangely intimate. When he closed the door behind him, Olivia released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. She sat on the edge of the bed, listening to the storm rage outside and wondering why her heart was beating so quickly. It was just proximity and unusual circumstances, she told herself. Nothing more. Yet as she slipped between the cold sheets, she couldn't shake the unsettling feeling that the Alexander Thorne she was discovering here was nothing like the man she convinced herself she knew and hated so thoroughly. Olivia woke to absolute whiteness. For a disorienting moment, she thought she'd gone blind until she realized she was staring at a window completely obscured by snow. The blizzard hadn't just continued overnight. It had intensified. She found Alexander in the kitchen, hair slightly rumpled, studying a weather radar printout he must have downloaded before losing internet connection. He'd already made coffee, the rich aroma filling the cabin. "It's worse," he said without preamble, sliding a mug toward her. "The access road is completely buried. Even if the storm breaks today, it would take crews at least 48 hours to clear a path." Olivia took the coffee, noting with surprise that he prepared it exactly as she preferred, strong with just a splash of milk. Had he been paying attention yesterday? "So we're looking at minimum 4 days here," she said, trying to keep her voice neutral. 5, possibly 6. He folded the printout with precise movements. "I've taken inventory. We'll need to ration certain items." The methodical way he approached their predicament should have irritated her, his need to control everything, to plan every detail. Instead, she found it oddly reassuring. After breakfast, they gravitated to the main room where large windows offered a dramatic view of the storm. The silence between them had shifted from hostile to contemplative. "I reviewed your portfolio," Alexander said suddenly, after the Westlake presentation. Olivia tensed. "Why?" "Professional curiosity." He turned to face her. "Your Osaka Cultural Center design was brilliant, structurally innovative while honoring traditional elements." The unexpected compliment caught her off guard. "You rejected my resort design as impractical fantasy." "The execution was impractical," he corrected. "The vision was exceptional." "There's a difference between challenging and impossible," she countered, warming to professional debate. "Your company promotes itself as innovative, yet you consistently choose the safest option. Safe options keep 2,000 people employed." His tone remained even, but she caught a flash of something in his eyes. Architectural brilliance means nothing if the project bankrupts the developer. So it's always about the bottom line. It's about balance. He leaned forward. "Your resort design required materials that would have doubled the budget and extended construction by 8 months. Beautiful, yes. Viable? No." Olivia opened her mouth to argue, then paused, considering his perspective. "You could have explained that instead of dismissing it publicly. Perhaps." Something like regret crossed his features. "I'm not known for my diplomatic skills." "That's putting it mildly," she muttered, but without real malice. Alexander's lips twitched, almost a smile. The near expression transformed his face, softening the sharp angles and making him look younger, more approachable. Later, as Olivia attempted to help prepare lunch, she reached for a bowl on a high shelf. The ceramic container slipped from her grasp, sending a cloud of flour exploding across the kitchen and all over Alexander's previously immaculate black sweater. She froze, mortified, as he stood there looking like he'd been caught in a snowdrift. For a terrible moment, she expected cold fury. Instead, He looked down at himself, then at her flower-dusted face, and did something she never would have anticipated. He laughed. Not a polite chuckle, but a genuine, deep laugh that transformed his entire demeanor. "Your face," he managed, still laughing. "You look like you're expecting me to fire you." The absurdity of the situation. Two professionals covered in flour in a snowbound cabin struck her, and suddenly she was laughing too. The tension that had hummed between them since her arrival cracked like thin ice. "I thought you were going to evict me into the blizzard," she admitted, wiping tears of laughter from her eyes. "Tempting," he said, but his smile remained, "though I'd hate to lose my chef." The moment of levity was interrupted by his satellite phone ringing. Alexander's expression immediately shuddered as he answered, stepping into the adjacent room. Olivia busied herself cleaning the flower disaster, but his voice carried despite his lowered tone. "The board doesn't have all the information," he said tensely. "The acquisition would eliminate 50 jobs minimum. No, I won't approve it just to appease shareholders. Because some things matter more than quarterly profits, James." She paused, cloth in hand, surprised by the conviction in his voice. "My father built this company on ethical development. I won't dismantle that legacy for a temporary stock bump." His voice hardened. "Find another solution. And tell Richardson his creative accounting suggestions are not welcome." When he returned, his expression had reverted to its usual controlled mask. But Olivia saw it differently now, not coldness, but containment. She wondered what it cost him to maintain that rigid self-discipline. "Everything okay?" she asked carefully. "Business as usual." He glanced at the flowers she'd missed on the counter. "You've got a spot." He reached out, then hesitated, his hand hovering near her cheek. Olivia felt her breath catch as he gently brushed flour from her face, his fingers warm against her skin. The contact lasted only seconds, but something electric passed between them. He stepped back abruptly. "I should change," he said, gesturing to his flour-covered sweater. As he disappeared down the hallway, Olivia pressed her fingers to her cheek, where his touch lingered. The man she'd heard on the phone, defending jobs, rejecting unethical practices, contradicted everything she believed about Alexander Thorne. The realization was unsettling, like finding solid ground where she'd expected quicksand. The storm continued its assault outside, but inside, something had shifted. The walls they'd built against each other had begun to crack, revealing glimpses of the people behind professional personas they constructed so carefully. "Hello, my beautiful souls. I hope this story is warming your heart, despite the blizzard our characters are facing. I wonder, have you ever misjudged someone only to discover unexpected depths beneath their surface? Perhaps you wore and masked yourself, hiding your true feelings behind walls of protection? Wherever you are in your journey, remember that vulnerability takes incredible courage. If you're enjoying this emotional roller coaster, please tap that like button. Each one is a whisper in my heart that these stories matter to you. Now, let's return to our snowbound souls as they discover that sometimes the greatest revelations happen when we have nowhere left to hide. The temperature plummeted as darkness fell. Outside, the winds howled, transformed into an eerie moan that seemed to circle the cabin like a hungry predator. Inside, the generator struggled against the cold, lights dimming periodically before rallying again. "The heating system can't keep up," Alexander said, adding another log to fireplace. Flames leapt higher, casting dancing shadows across his face. "We should stay in one room to conserve warmth." Olivia wrapped a blanket tighter around her shoulders, nodding in agreement. The main room with its massive stone fireplace was the obvious choice. She settled onto the thick rug before the hearth, watching as Alexander poured amber liquid into 2 crystal tumblers. 18-year-old scotch, he said, offering her one. "Seems appropriate for a night like this." The liquor burned pleasantly down her throat, warming her from within. Alexander sat beside her, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body, yet still maintaining a careful distance. "Your design," he said suddenly, staring into the flames. "It reminded me of something my mother once created." Olivia turned to him, surprised by the personal revelation. "Your mother was an architect?" A shadow crossed his face. "She wanted to be, had the talent for it. Extraordinary talent." but my grandfather insisted she study business instead. He took a long sip of scotch. She met my father at business school. They built Thorne Developments together, though her name never appeared on any documents. Why not? Different era. My grandfather's influence. His jaw tightened. She designed our family home, a masterpiece of sustainable architecture, before the term even existed. She used to sketch buildings constantly, even after... He trailed off. After what? Olivia asked softly. Alexander's eyes remained fixed on the fire. When I was 18, my parents were driving to see a potential development site. Black ice on a mountain road. They went over the guardrail. He spoke with practiced attachment, but Olivia saw his knuckles whiten around the glass. I was in my first year at Harvard. Came home to bury them and found myself the CEO of a company I'd never wanted. The revelation hung in the air between them. Olivia saw him differently now. Not as a privileged heir, but as a young man thrust into responsibility, carrying the weight of a legacy he hadn't chosen. Your resort design, he continued quietly, the integration of living walls, the way natural light flowed through every space, it was exactly how she would have approached it. When I saw it, He shook his head. It was like seeing her work again. So, you rejected it because it reminded you of her? Olivia asked, confused. I rejected it because it made me feel something I'd spent years burying. His voice dropped lower. And because you stood there, so passionate and alive, defending a vision that wasn't just about profit margins. You reminded me of everything I'd sacrificed for the company. The confession hung between them, raw and unexpected. Olivia found herself sharing in return. My parents own a small architectural salvage business, she said. They restored historical elements. Stained glass, carved banisters, antique fixtures. When I was 16, a development company bought their building, tripled the rent overnight. They couldn't afford it. She traced the rim of her glass. They lost everything. My college fund, their retirement savings. All of it went into trying to save the business. Alexander watched her intently. What happened? They downsized our garage. I worked after school and weekends while applying for every scholarship I could find. The memory still carried its sting. The developer who bought their building demolished it for a parking structure that was never even built, just a tax write-off of them. Understanding dawned in his eyes. And that's why you hate developers. Why you hate me. I hated what you represented, she corrected. The callous disregard for people's lives in pursuit of profit. Not all developers are the same, he said, an edge entering his voice. Thorne has never displaced existing businesses. It's one of our core principles. Principles are easy when you've never struggled, she shot back. You had choices I never did. You think I had choices? His voice rose slightly. I was 21 with 2,000 employees depending on me. The board wanted to sell to a conglomerate that would have gutted the company. I gave up everything, my own plans, relationships, any semblance of a normal life, to preserve what my parents built. At least you had something to preserve. The words burst from her. Do you have any idea what it's like to watch your parents lose everything? To see your mother selling family heirlooms to pay medical bills? They were both on their feet now, the earlier warmth replaced by the heat of confrontation. No, I don't, he admitted, his voice tight. Just as you have no idea what it's like to bury your parents at 21 and step into a role you never wanted, with everyone waiting for you to fail. They stood facing each other, breathing hard, the firelight illuminating the pain neither had intended to reveal. Something shifted in Alexander's expression as he looked at her, anger giving way to something more complex. That day at the presentation, he said, his voice dropping to almost a whisper. I rejected your design because I couldn't handle how it made me feel. How you made me feel. What do you mean? Olivia asked, her heart suddenly racing. You walked into that boardroom radiating passion and brilliance, challenging every assumption. His eyes held hers. I haven't felt anything real in years, just numb determination to keep the company going. Then suddenly there you were, and I felt everything. It terrified me. The confession hung in the air between them. Olivia stood frozen, processing his words. You rejected my design because you were attracted to me? she finally managed, incredulous. I rejected it because you made me question everything I've sacrificed for the past 12 years. He ran a hand through his hair in frustration. Because for the first time since my parents died, I wanted something for myself, not for the company. The raw honesty in his voice stripped away her defenses. She saw him clearly now. Not the cold, calculating businessman, but a man who had buried his own dreams alongside his parents. "What did you want?" she asked, her voice barely audible above the crackling fire. Alexander stepped closer, his eyes never leaving hers. "This." His hand came up to cup her face, giving her every chance to pull away. Instead, Olivia found herself leaning into his touch, drawn by the vulnerability he'd finally revealed. When his lips met hers, the contact was electric. Tentative at first, then deepening as years of suppressed emotion broke free. His arms encircled her waist, pulling her against him as she wound her fingers through his hair. The kiss was nothing like she'd imagined, not calculated or controlled, but desperate and honest, as if he finally found something essential after years of searching. When they finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, the world had shifted on its axis. Everything she thought she knew about Alexander Thorne, about herself, had been upended in the span of a heartbeat. "I've wanted to do that since you walked into my boardroom," he confessed, his forehead resting against hers. Olivia's response was to pull him back to her, surrendering to the connection neither had seen coming. A connection forged in the crucible of forced proximity and unexpected truth. Morning light filtered through frost-covered windows, casting prismatic patterns across the cabin floor. Olivia woke slowly, momentarily disoriented by the unfamiliar weight of an arm draped across her waist. They had fallen asleep before the fireplace, wrapped in blankets and each other. Alexander's eyes opened, meeting hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. For a moment, neither spoke, the newness of their connection hanging delicately between them. "Good morning," he said finally, his voice rough with sleep. "Morning," she replied, suddenly self-conscious. Last night's vulnerability felt exposed in the harsh light of day. He seemed to sense her uncertainty, giving her space as they moved through their morning routine. The air between them crackled with unspoken questions and a new awareness that transformed even the most mundane interactions into something charged with meaning. "The storm's intensity has decreased," Alexander noted, studying the window. "Still heavy, but the worst has passed." Olivia nodded, cradling her coffee mug. "How soon before the roads are cleared?" "Hard to say. I'll try the satellite phone again." He hesitated, then added, "About last night, we should check our supplies," she interrupted, not ready to analyze what had happened between them. "See what we need to ration if we're here another day." A flicker of disappointment crossed his face, but he nodded. "I'll check the generator fuel levels." While Alexander worked outside, Olivia searched for additional blankets in the study. His laptop sat open on the desk, the screen illuminating automatically when she moved nearby. She hadn't meant to look, but a subject line caught her eye. "Bennett Architectural Acquisition, final offer." Her heart stuttered. With growing horror, she scrolled through an email chain between Alexander and his board of directors discussing the hostile takeover of her firm, the small, independent company she'd poured her soul into for the past 3 years. Undervalued due to recent project losses, acquire at 40% below market, absorb key talent, and eliminate competition. Bennett will have no choice but to accept. The emails dated back months, long before the Snowbound encounter. The most recent was from just 3 days ago, with Alexander writing, "Proceed with preparations. I'll make the final decision after this weekend." This weekend, when he would be meeting with her, the pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. There had been no coincidence, no twist of fate that brought them together in this cabin. He had orchestrated everything, perhaps even Mia's involvement, to soften her up before destroying her company. Last night's revelations, the kiss, all of it, a calculated move and a business strategy. When Alexander returned, stamping snow from his boots, he found her standing in the center of the room, rigid with fury. "You're buying my firm." Her voice was deadly quiet. "A hostile takeover." He froze, eyes darting to the open laptop. "Olivia, was any of it real?" she demanded. The personal revelations? The connection? Or was it all just to make me more amenable when you destroy everything I built? It's not what you think. He stepped toward her, but she backed away. Did you arrange this? Get Mia to send me here so you could seduce me into selling my company for pennies? No. His voice hardened. I had no idea you would be here. Mia's firm was recommended by our design department. I've never met her, but you knew about the acquisition. She held up the laptop. You've been planning it for months. Alexander's jaw tightened. Yes, the board has been pursuing it. They see your firm is undervalued after losing the Westlake contract, which, may I remind you, I was responsible for. The reminder twisted the knife deeper. So this is finishing what you started. The board initiated it. I've been stalling for months. These emails say otherwise, she countered. You told them to proceed with preparations 3 days ago. Because they were threatening to move forward without me. Frustration edged his voice. I needed time to find an alternative solution. And seducing me was that solution? The words tasted bitter. Something dangerous flashed in his eyes. Is that what you think happened last night? That I calculated every word, every touch, as some elaborate corporate strategy? What else should I think? You rejected my design, cost me the biggest contract of my career, and now your company is poised to swallow mine whole. Her voice cracked despite her efforts to remain composed. Last night you said I made you feel something. Was that feeling triumph? The accusation hit him like a physical blow. He stepped back, his expression shuddering. You've made up your mind about me, he said quietly. Nothing I say will change that. Try the truth for once. The truth? His laugh held no humor. The truth is I've spent the past 6 months fighting my own board to protect your firm because I regretted how I handled your presentation. The truth is I was going to use this weekend to develop an alternative to acquisition, a partnership that would benefit both companies. He ran a hand through his hair in frustration. And yes, the truth is that everything that happened between us last night was real. But clearly, you're determined to believe the worst. Before she could respond, the satellite phone rang. Alexander answered it, his eyes never leaving hers. Yes, he said into the receiver. The road is passable? Good. Yes, 2 people. We'll be ready. He ended the call, his expression unreadable. Rescue crews have cleared the main road. They'll reach the cabin by evening. He turned away, his shoulders rigid. You'll be free of me by nightfall. The finality in his voice matched the closing of a door between them. A door Olivia had slammed shut with her accusations. Yet as she watched him walk away, doubt began to creep in. Had she misinterpreted everything? Or had she narrowly escaped being manipulated by a master strategist? The storm outside had begun to clear, but the one between them had only intensified. The rescue team arrived as the last light faded from the sky, their headlights cutting through the lingering snowfall like searchlights. Olivia and Alexander moved through the cabin in silence, gathering their belongings with mechanical efficiency, careful to maintain the invisible barrier that had formed between them. Ms. Bennett? Mr. Thorne? We've got a vehicle ready, called the rescue coordinator from the doorway. Alexander handed Olivia her portfolio case without meeting her eyes. Safe travels. The finality in those 2 words echoed in the space between them. She opened her mouth, uncertain what she even wanted to say, but had already turned away, speaking to the coordinator about securing the cabin. The drive down the mountain passed in a blur. Olivia stared out the window at the transformed landscape, pristine white covering everything, beautiful and treacherous, like emotions that seemed pure until you fell into their depths. 3 days later, back in her apartment in the city, Olivia moved through her routine like a sleepwalker. The familiar comfort of her space felt somehow hollow after the intensity of those snowbound days. She threw herself into work, trying to outrun the doubts that plagued her quiet moments. Had she misjudged him? The questions surfaced repeatedly, unwelcome and persistent. On Thursday morning, her firm's financial director burst into her office, face flushed with excitement. The Thorne acquisition is off, he announced. Not just paused, completely withdrawn. Their legal team sent notification this morning. Olivia sat perfectly still, absorbing the news. Did they give a reason? Only that current leadership has determined an acquisition is not aligned with the company's long-term vision. He shook his head in disbelief. We were preparing for battle, and they just walked away. That same afternoon, an email arrived from the Architectural Sustainability Foundation. Attached was a press release announcing that Thorne Developments had credited her original eco-resort design as the inspiration for their newest project, with full acknowledgement and a substantial licensing fee deposited to her firm's account. The email included a personal note from the foundation's director. Alexander Thorne insisted on proper attribution, said it was long overdue. Olivia stared at the screen, her certainty crumbling. This wasn't the action of someone executing a hostile takeover. This was amends, driven by a need to understand. She began researching Alexander beyond the corporate profile she dismissed. What she found challenged everything she believed about him. A children's hospital wing funded anonymously until a grateful parent's investigation revealed the donor, a scholarship program for architecture students from disadvantaged backgrounds, a foundation supporting small businesses affected by development, established the same year his parents died. Most revealing was an interview he'd given to a business journal last year, largely overlooked because of its technical focus. When asked about his management philosophy, he'd said, "My father taught me that true success isn't measured in profit margins, but in the legacy you create. Buildings rise and fall. What endures is how you impacted lives." The Alexander Thorne emerging from her research bore little resemblance to the cold corporate tyrant she constructed in her mind. This man had depth principles and wounds that mirrored her own in unexpected ways. Late one night, she found herself on his company's website, studying a photograph of him at a project groundbreaking. His expression was the same controlled mask she'd seen crack during their time together, revealing, in retrospect, not coldness but carefully contained intensity. She remembered his words by the firelight. "I haven't felt anything real in years. Then suddenly there you were, and I felt everything." The truth hit her with stunning clarity. She had accused him of manipulation while refusing to see the evidence before her. She had been so determined to cast him as the villain in her narrative that she'd missed the man behind the reputation, a man who had shown her his true self during those snowbound days, a man who had walked away rather than fight her misconceptions, who had then quietly done the right thing without seeking credit or forgiveness. Olivia closed her laptop, a complicated mix of emotions washing over her. She had been wrong about Alexander Thorne. The question now was whether it was too late to make it right. The annual Architectural Innovation Gala transformed the city's historic art museum into a wonderland of light and elegance. Crystal chandeliers reflected off marble floors as the industry's elite mingled among displays celebrating the year's most groundbreaking designs. Olivia paused at the entrance, her emerald gown catching the light as she scanned the crowd. She declined her colleague's invitation to arrive together, needing these moments alone to steady her nerves. Tonight, she would receive the Visionary Design Award, professional validation that would normally be the pinnacle of her evening. But her racing heart had little to do with the award. She spotted him across the room, Alexander Thorne in impeccable black tie, engaged in conversation with the Sustainability Foundation's director. Even from a distance, she could read the tension in his posture, the careful control in his expressions. The mask was firmly in place. Throughout the evening, they orbited each other like cautious planets, exchanging only brief nods of acknowledgement. When her award was announced, she felt his eyes on her as she accepted the crystal trophy, but when she looked his way during her speech, he had already turned away. As the formal program concluded and the orchestra began playing, Olivia made her decision. She placed her award on a side table and moved purposefully across the room, heart pounding against her ribs. Alexander stood alone by a window, staring out at the city lights. He turned as she approached, surprise flickering briefly across his features before the mask reasserted itself. "Congratulations on your award," he said formally. "Well deserved." "Thank you." She took a deep breath. "And thank you for crediting my design, for withdrawing the acquisition offer." Something guarded entered his expression. It was the right thing to do. "Yes, it was." She met his eyes directly. "I was wrong about you." The simple admission hung between them. Alexander's careful composure faltered. I researched your foundation, she continued. The hospital wing, the scholarship program, all of it. That's not public information. I'm thorough when I care about something. She stepped closer. Someone, his eyes darkened. Olivia, I judge you based on a single interaction and my own past wounds, she said, the words tumbling out before courage deserted her. I refuse to see the evidence in front of me, even when you showed me who you really are. And who am I? He asked quietly. A man who carries more weight than anyone should bear alone, who sacrifices his own dreams to protect others, who values integrity over profit. Her voice softened. A man I'd like to know better, if he's willing to give me a second chance. Alexander studied her face, searching for something. You were right about one thing, he finally said. I did manipulate the situation not the way you thought, but I've been keeping my distance tonight deliberately. Why? Because I was afraid if I came near you, everyone in this room would see exactly how I feel about you. The admission cost him. She could tell. I'm not good at this, Olivia. Vulnerability doesn't come easily after 12 years of being the person everyone depends on. Then we'll learn together. She held out her hand. Dance with me? For a breathless moment, she thought he might refuse. Then his fingers closed around hers, warm and certain. On the dance floor, his hands settled at her waist with exquisite care, as if she were something precious. They moved together with the same natural rhythm they found in the cabin, bodies remembering what minds had tried to forget. I can't offer you simplicity, he murmured, his lips close to her ear. My life is complicated. The company. I don't want simple, she interrupted. I want real. His eyes held hers, the mask finally falling away completely. That night by the fire, everything I said, everything I felt, it was real. The most real thing I've experienced in years. Olivia reached up, her palm against his cheek. Then let's start there, with what's real between us. When he kissed her, gentle yet certain, the crowded ballroom seemed to fade away. It wasn't the passionate desperation of their first kiss, but something deeper, a promise, a beginning. They continued dancing long after the song ended. Two people who had found each other against all odds, in the last place either had expected to look. The journey ahead wouldn't be simple, but as they moved together in perfect synchrony, both knew with absolute certainty that it would be worth every step. Hello, my beautiful souls. As our story comes to its close, I find myself wondering about the journeys in your own hearts. Have you ever found love in the most unexpected places? With the person you least expected? Life has a way of surprising us when we're busy making other plans, doesn't it? Wherever you are tonight, whether you're feeling hopeful about love or healing from heartbreak, know that you're not alone. We're all searching for that person who sees us completely and loves us anyway. If this story touched something in your soul, please share it with someone who might need its message of hope and second chances. Tap that subscribe button to join our family of dreamers and believers. I pour my heart into these stories because you matter to me. Until next time, keep your heart open to love's possibilities